Welcome ladies and gentlemen to another quick performance analysis video. This time we're in a nuclear infested America in Fallout 4. And looking on the Xbox One and the PS4 versions, there's been a lot of controversy about this game. People have been desperate for me to have a look at it. So this is my first contact. A far more detailed and thorough analysis will come very soon across the PC and both console versions. But what we're looking at here on the console versions is a fully native 1920 by 1080 on both machines, no surprise there, with a 30 FPS target. And I know looking at the visuals you're all going to think, what in the hell? And they're not great, but there is some nice touches going on in the game. It's got some volumetric lighting throughout, which is very nice, albeit not very high resolution. It's got some global illumination passes you can see here on the bounce from the settee. It's got screen space reflections, and it's got a vast open world to explore, albeit a barren wasteland infested shithole. And in typical Bethesda style, it's not the most consistently performing game, but most of this comes down to the digital binary control system rather than actual frame rate issues throughout the game. It's very clunky and cumbersome, just like any other game you've ever played, including the previous Fallout games or Skyrim. It doesn't feel any different, and it's based on the same engine, and it's certainly something they need to look at. But in terms of performance, what are we looking at here? Well, on the Xbox One and the PS4, like I say, it's running at a target of 30 FPS, but does it achieve that target throughout, or is there issues? Well, throughout my playtest so far of around an hour or two on the first sections of the game, there's a far more thorough analysis coming later on, there's no real problems at all. The Xbox One comes in at a very solid performance indeed, in fact far more solid than the PS4 version, but there's an explanation for that, I think, which I'll mention in a moment. After analysing over 17,500 frames on both consoles for this analysis here, the PS4 drops 114 of those frames from its target mind. Remember, this is a 30 FPS game, 33 milliseconds, so it's actually holding every frame twice in its normal succession of refresh rate. On the Xbox One, we're looking at a far more solid 41 drops. And as you can see on screen, the detailed metrics of both these consoles, you can see that the Xbox One is the better performing machine. Now the high point here is a 383 millisecond dip, which takes you down to 19 frames per second, the only point in the video where you'll see this, and this is from an autosave sequence, and the high point of 30 FPS, just like the Xbox One. But overall, what we're looking at is a game that consistently holds 30 more often than not, and the only time you get dips, autosaving, which is a common occurrence for so many engines, where it just hangs here, it's worse on the PS4, and when you're loading the areas or basically entering sector points in the game. But in terms of lighting, visual quality, they're pretty much identical. Certainly I'm not seeing any standout moments at this point, with a nice set of texture filtering running across the game. And even though the character models are pretty low, the speech recognition system on the lips is actually reasonably good, and the animation system is reasonably good throughout for such a vast collection of dialogue that can come from yourself and other characters that you choose throughout the game. But in terms of performance, why does the PS4 seem so much worse than the Xbox One? Well, pretty much everything here is not a GPU related issue. That's pretty obvious. You can see in the firefights here when we're shooting and the flames later on in the video, there is no issues of it dropping. But what you do get is every time you shoot the gun on the PS4, you tend to drop a frame as it's calculating the hit points, and obviously there's a whole simulation running throughout the engine when you're playing the game. For every hit, you can even go into the target mode and reduce areas of the body down by the damage control to blow off limbs, head. It's got the complete tessellated damage system in the game, and this is quite a nice little touch. But in terms of the PS4's performance, it's CPU bound, just like the Xbox One more often than not, aside the I/O loading issues when you enter new areas. But predominantly what we're looking at here, I think, is a game that's been ported to the PS4 using GNMX, very similar to what The Witcher 3 I believe started with, and the Xbox One is simply running a DirectX control system, which obviously it can run natively, so therefore it's less overhead on the actual CPU itself. Bearing in mind it's a wrapper function within the PS4, so there is a CPU cost to that. Maybe not as much as GPU, but this game is not stressing either of these GPUs out, hence why you're seeing a fully native 1920 by 1080 on both. Even though the 30 FPS target is not ideal, and I would have expected a little bit more, the CPUs I think are the reason why we're seeing such a target and dips below that in regular occurrences. But at the end of the day, this is a Bethesda game. You kind of know what you get. It's a vast open world that you can explore and then get lost in, with a story that reasonably hooks you. It's got a very Half-Life vibe at the start, but outside of that, it's going to play exactly as you expect. This is Fallout. It doesn't feel that much different to me, but you may love it, and again, it is a very popular game. Don't let the performance issues that people have been talking about and going mad about put you off. This game doesn't perform anywhere near a level that's really bad. There's certainly far worse games out there. Like I said, the biggest problem with the performance on both is the control system and the clunky animations, rather than any actual frame rate issues. There is points in the game where it can dip, certainly. Like I say, when it does, it's usually worse on the PS4, and they tend to be in firefights when you're hitting lots of enemies at once. It can cause the frames to drop every second or so as you're playing the game, and there is points on the PS4 where it can drop to a lock of 20 frames per second, but again, these are very rare and mostly down to loading issues and issues with the actual CPU, like I say. But we may see a later patch that improves on this. And obviously I'll cover much further sections in the game and see if it stresses or gets any worse in my full head-to-head. But for now, I'm going to leave you with a few more minutes of footage to see you out, and I'll see you guys and girls very soon on the next one.